Ladies and gentlemen, something incredible has just been revealed to us. First off, before this video begins at all, I would like to apologize for the fact that this is being uploaded on April Fools. This is not meant to be an April Fools joke, this is just bad timing. For those of you who don't know, my upload days are Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I needed to get this out ASAP. This wasn't even meant to be today's video, but regardless, I knew I had to make a video about this ASAP because this is insane. You've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, and I'm sure you're pretty excited. So let's get into this. Although before I do, I'd really appreciate it if you guys could go like the video, subscribe, and go join the casual Discord in the description down below if you don't want to miss any future videos, COD Zombies or otherwise, or any of my live streams. I'm currently in the process of playing through every single Zombies map from World at War to Black Ops 6, including a lot of maps that I've never played before, and those streams are happening every Friday night, but I'm taking a break this week and next week to both play and do the Easter egg on Black Ops 6's newest map, Shattered Vale. So if you don't want to miss any future videos or live streams, then go join the casual Discord in the description down below, as you'll be automatically pinged whenever I upload a video or go live. And if you're a COD Zombies fan looking for a place to hang out with other COD Zombies fans, then also go join the COD Zombies unofficial Discord in the description down below as well. So without further ado, let's get into this. Now, throughout the history of COD Zombies, there have obviously been a great number of mysteries, and a lot of them still don't have an answer. Who made the Paralyzer in Buried? What happened to the Call of the Dead crew after the Call of the Dead map? Does Bushroot B exist? Okay, maybe not that last one. But by far the biggest mystery still unsolved within COD Zombies is the identity of the entity in control of the red-eyed zombies. As I discussed in my Zombies All Eye Colors video, which I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen, originally the eye color of the zombies didn't mean anything, because back in the day when it started, zombies didn't have a story. But then on Moon, when Richtofen took control of the zombies, everything changed when Treyarch decided that the person in control of the zombies affected what eye color they had. And since then, we've seen a lot of different eye colors, all of which I explained in the eye colors video, which you should go check out if you haven't already. However, while there were some instances for some of the colors where the identity of the controller was a little bit up in the air, almost all of the colors had at least one confirmed controller. For yellow, we had Samantha, for blue, we had Richtofen, orange had Maxis, and white had the Avogadro. But there was one color that we never got an answer for. In Mob of the Dead, one of the most legendary zombies maps in history, we were introduced to zombies that had red eyes. Now, due to not knowing a lot about the lore and importance of Mob of the Dead back in the day, a lot of people actually assumed that Mob took place in hell, and thus the zombies were being controlled by the devil himself. But as time went on, the red-eyed zombies became more and more mysterious. Not only did we eventually learn that Mob of the Dead wasn't in hell, but actually took place in a pocket dimension controlled by the Shadow Man, the red-eyed zombies also reappeared in maps that had nothing to do with the Shadow Man, such as Grod Krovi and Tagda Toten. And although they did also reappear in Vanguard Zombies, at that point it was confirmed that they were under the control of Cortifex, who was a Dark Ether Elder God. And the Dark Ether was sealed off during the time of the original Ether storyline, and the Dark Ether gods weren't a part of that storyline, so it's pretty safe to say that Cortifex wasn't in control of the red-eyed zombies during the original Ether storyline. So up until this point, we have been completely bamboozled as to who is actually controlling the red-eyed zombies. A lot of different theories have been put forward, like the Shadow Man, Dr. Monty, the Apothecans, the Apothecan Blood, Brutus, so many different theories, but none of them were ever confirmed. Until today. Because today, almost 12 years after the release of Mob of the Dead, we finally have an answer! Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this clip floating around. It was an interview with Kevin Drew, who, if you don't know, is basically the guy in charge of zombies nowadays. Now, this was around 8 months ago, so take a listen to this.
When we were working on Black Ops 2, we were like a new team working on it, and we hadn't quite caught up with all of the rules yet. And so when we were determining the eye color for Mob of the Dead, a producer got asked like what color to make them, and he's just like, I don't know, red. And then with Q2, like we released the trailer, and the community is like, what is this third faction? What do the red eyes mean? And we're like, oh, okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, mystery solved, you know. They were never meant to mean anything. Well, number one, obviously, just because they didn't mean anything when they were introduced doesn't mean they didn't then integrate something within the lore that made them mean something. And number two, this isn't true. Because this seems to suggest that from the start, the Treyarch team had absolutely no idea what the red-eyed zombies were actually gonna mean in the story. But that's where you're wrong, my friends. Because there was one man who did. And that man was none other than Jason Blundell himself. As I'm sure you all know, Jason Blundell is basically the godfather of modern day zombies. He was the one in charge of the entirety of Black Ops 3, which we all regard as pretty much the golden days of zombies. That was the era when zombies was at its peak in terms of creativity, quality assurance, and most importantly, community loyalty. And not only did he spearhead the incredible success of Black Ops 3 zombies, but he was also the one that gave us Origins, and yes, Mob of the Dead. Because Jason was actually the director of Mob of the Dead. And not only that, but we know, thanks to something that I'm going to be talking about in a second, that Jason was also heavily involved in one of the most important zombies maps ever made. Derice. As we all know, Derice was basically where zombies started transforming into what we know it to be today. Or at least, what we knew it to be before Cold War. With the introduction of the Pack-a-Punch, advanced features like the teleporters, but most notably, the story. Because Derice was the first time that we started getting a proper storyline in zombies, with all of the different story radios hidden around the map, and we basically have Jason to thank for that. And honestly, the fact that it turns out that he was the one responsible for all of this stuff genuinely does not even surprise me at this point. Like, Jason is just... He's amazing. And whether you like modern day zombies or not, like, I'm actually a bit of a defender of a lot of different aspects of modern day, like Cold War to Black Ops 6 zombies. You can't deny that zombies really hasn't been the same since he left. But regardless, the fact that he was responsible for all of that actually raises a curious question. Why would Jason Blundell, a man who is known for not only his amazing attention to detail, but also his incredible and intrinsic knowledge of the zombies storyline, create a map with a brand new eye color, knowing that eye color means something in zombies, and not have any explanation for it? The answer is simple. He wouldn't. After all, this is Jason Blundell we're talking about here. This is the man that gave us the impossible Easter egg. The man who revolutionized Easter eggs in zombies by introducing outro cutscenes. You really think that he would direct a map like this and not have a backstory for these new red-eyed zombies? No, my friends. Jason always had a plan, and he had a plan from the very beginning. Just over a week ago, Jason was in a new interview with Jeff Gersman, talking all about the history of his involvement with COD Zombies, including all the stuff about Derice I mentioned earlier. However, this was not the most important part of the interview, because as well as touching on the impossible Easter egg, Jason was also asked about Mob of the Dead. And he talked about how when the map came out, everyone was confused and interested about what the red-eyed zombies meant. But unlike Kevin Drew, Jason had a different answer. An answer that he has been holding on to for the past 12 years. Because, ladies and gentlemen, within this interview, Jason Blundell, the godfather of modern-day zombies, revealed that there was, in fact, an entity that was controlling the red-eyed zombies not just in Mob and Blood, but in Grodkrovi, Revelations, and Toten as well. And it wasn't the Shadow Man, it wasn't Brutus or Monty or the Apothecans. Everything we thought we knew was wrong, because Jason revealed that the controller behind the red-eyed zombies, the entity hidden in plain sight all this time, is none other than the American deathcore singer William Ramos. I know, it's absolutely insane, but stay with me here, because Jason actually had a really complicated backstory for how Will Ramos actually became the controller of the red-eyed zombies. So strap in, because this is about to be one hell of a wild ride. Now, William Ramos is an American singer who was born in 1993, which within the timeline would place his birth a few years before Call of the Dead. That's not strictly relevant, that's just something to give you guys an idea of where in the timeline we are. But this means that within the timeline, Will Ramos would actually grow up going into the Black Ops 2 era of the timeline. This means that he would have been on Earth during the events of Myuu, where the Earth was fractured and humanity basically went to shit. Jason explains that within the story, Ramos was actually a member of the Flesh, which, if you don't know, is the group that Samuel Stuhlinger was a part of that ate the flesh of the zombies. Eating that flesh gave them a direct link to the Dark Ether and allowed them to hear the voice of Richtofen, who was in control of the MPD. But instead of being wiped out with the rest of the flesh during the battle with the Maxis followers, Ramos would actually escape by falling into a temporal rift. A particularly powerful one that would not only teleport him through time, but also across universes to Dimension 63, which, if any of you have forgotten, is the universe where Origins, Mob of the Dead, and Shadows of Evil take place. Ramos arrived in Morgue City during 1920, and having eaten the flesh of the undead, although he could no longer hear Ultimus Richtofen, given that he was now in a separate universe, he still had a connection to the Dark Ether, and thus his mind began to fill with corruption directly from the Dark Ether. Ramos would then spend the next couple of years basically inventing deathcore in Dimension 63. As in the original timeline, deathcore obviously wouldn't become a thing until the early 2000s, but being in the 1920s within Dimension 63, Ramos introduced deathcore a lot earlier than anticipated. But unfortunately, thanks to his connection to the Dark Ether, Ramos's way too early deathcore wasn't just music. Similar to Richtofen's diary from the original timeline, the lyrics of Ramos's songs that he wrote down on paper actually also had a connection to the Dark Ether. Whilst writing lyrics, Ramos would regularly doodle apothecan symbols on the lyric pages, and when he performed those songs for the masses, it would form a ever so subtle connection to the Dark Ether with everyone who heard it. In fact, his connection to the Dark Ether had gotten so strong at this point that while he was writing his songs, he was actually unintentionally writing about other events in the timeline, such as Warpath of Disease, where he described that a cancerous mass envelops my skin, describing the eventual rise of the undead in Morgue City during the events of Shadows of Evil, and also the lyrics "This world is a disease, a fucking cancer," describing how every universe would always always be corrupted by element 115. There was also Godmaker, the lyrics of which read, "Ancient genes have spliced the earth. We now know our creator. Forced to gather in mass herds, deafening hysteria, searching for a source of faith. A new life force has cornered our race. And now you know you were never really alone, so can't you see your existence is merely a flaw in its entirety? Chemicals will erase all life, you will be denied all rights, and you will behold a portrait of suffering." All of this describes so many events within the zombie storyline, such as the Earth being spliced by the rockets from Moon, forced to gather in mass herds referring to the gathering of the flesh and Maxis's followers, both of which were searching for a new faith from their new gods. And now you know you were never really alone, as humanity was hearing Richtofen and Maxis and probably assuming them to be gods. And then chemicals will erase all life, you will be denied all rights, and you will behold a portrait of suffering. That not only refers to how Maxis would eventually gain control of the ether again and destroy Earth, but how in the future, during the broken cycle, everything throughout the multiverse would be condemned to spend eternity in the dark ether. Every creature in the multiverse would be denied all rights. Denied the rights of peace and freedom and even life itself, and condemned to suffer eternally within the dark ether. In fact, in this universe, instead of August Burns Red being a band that Ramos would collaborate with to make the song The Cleansing, the album itself that The Cleansing was a part of would be called August Burns Red, specifically calling it August Burns Red after having a vision of the red-eyed undead that he would one day control. And he even influenced the artist that made the picture for The Cleansing, telling them exactly what he wanted it to look like, because this was meant to represent a vision of the dark ether that he saw of Terra Maledicta from Vanguard zombies. He was having visions of maps from Vanguard while the original multiverse was still a thing. Not to mention that the picture for the extermination process had the image of an undead apothecon that Ramos saw in his dreams, and another one of his songs, Sun Eater, was actually a direct reference to the apothecons and how they devour universes, and how they would eventually do the same to Dimension 63. So Ramos was sort of subconsciously gaining knowledge that not even Dr. Monty had, because Monty wasn't originally aware of the fact that during the events of Black Ops 4 Zombies, the cycle had been broken. And yet in his dreams and in his songs, Ramos was subconsciously seeing all of this. But unfortunately, Ramos' life in Morgue City, being the first ever deathcore singer, would eventually meet a very sudden end. As one night after performing in a club, he began flirting with a woman who turned out to be Angelina Bow, the wife of none other than Michael Finn O'Leary, one of the 4 mobsters in Mob of the Dead. And let's just say that Finn didn't take very kindly to someone flirting with his wife. Ramos was shot dead in a back alleyway by Finn, but with a connection to the dark ether stronger than most, Ramos's wandering soul was finally contacted by the Shadow Man himself. The Shadow Man was grateful for Ramos unintentionally planting the seeds that would eventually grow into the Apothecon's victory over Dimension 63, and as a reward, he granted Ramos partial control over the dark ether. Ramos's soul connected to the dark ether, and he became the entity in control of the red-eyed zombies, not only ruling over the pocket dimension that Mob of the Dead would reside within, allowing him vengeance on the man that killed him and his friends, but also attempting to thwart Primus in Grod Crovy, Revelations, and acting as the Apothecon's last line of defense in Tag der Toten. So everyone, that is the 100% true story of how William Ramos, an American deathcore singer, ascended to become the entity in control of the red-eyed zombies. I mean, it is honestly insane that Jason had all of this planned 12 years ago when he was making Mob of the Dead. I mean, we know that they always sort of have the events of the next game planned out by the time the present game ends, but the fact that in 2013, Jason Blundell had not only Black Ops 3 planned out, but Black Ops 4 and even Vanguard. And not only that, but the biggest plot twist that Jason revealed in this interview, and not only was this confirmed to be true, it was confirmed that this was always gonna be the case after getting banished to the Dark Ether along with everything else in the multiverse. Will Ramos became Cortifex. Okay, I'll stop. If you couldn't tell already, which I really think you should have been able to. In fact, from the moment I said that Will Ramos was the one in control of the red-eyed zombies, you should have all been able to tell, but yeah, this is all one big April Fool's video. I'm sure some of you are probably wondering where I got such a batshit crazy idea, but in truth, this actually comes from a little joke that happened last April in the COD Zombies unofficial Discord that I run. Basically, we were talking about who the controller of the red-eyed zombies could be, and one of the other people in the Discord randomly put in a picture of Will Ramos, and I made the joke that he was actually the one in control of the red-eyed zombies. I was pretty sad at the time because that was on the 11th of April, so April Fools had just gone. So yeah, I said to myself that next year I'd make a video talking about how Will Ramos was secretly the one in control of the red-eyed zombies. But originally I was just gonna say, yes, it was Will Ramos, and then cut out the joke completely. But I decided to go full throttle and make up an entire bullshit lore story for how Will Ramos could actually be the controller of the red-eyed zombies within the lore of COD Zombies. Everything that I've talked about in this video, I have genuinely made up myself, linking the songs and the lyrics that Ramos has actually made with events in the Zombies storyline, and honestly, I'd say I did a pretty good job. So yeah, I really hope you guys did enjoy this somewhat comedic video, and I hope that the fact that I told it in a sort of serious storytelling way only made it more humorous for all of you. Make sure to subscribe and go join both the casual Discord if you don't want to miss any future videos or live streams, including my COD Zombies live streams, which I do every Friday, and the COD Zombies unofficial Discord where this joke originated, both of which are in the description down below. Again, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Happy April Fools, everyone, and I will see you on another video or stream very, very soon. Goodbye, everyone.